So in our second segment tonight, we're going to be speaking to Nataliia Hera. Nataliia is the co-founder of the first UI design studio for audio interfaces named Voger Design. It was founded around 10 years ago. And more recently, she founded UI Mother, a UI kit online store for audio software. So between these two businesses, Nataliia has been involved in delivering over 250 high quality, innovative UIs for the audio software market. So we're really fortunate to have the opportunity to learn from Nataliia today. We're going to be having an open discussion surrounding selecting a proper designer for a project. So before we open up the discussion, we'd love to hear a bit more about your journey and background and what sort of led you to a career in audio interface design.
Oh, Rachel, thank you for such an intro. I've never been given such a cool intro before. Since the Joshua mentioned search, actually, I wanted to just say that we also contribute to the search UI design. It's an open source synthesizer. And actually, our journey began with the freelance work, with the non-paid work. So we just contributed to the skins for the Reaper, the software, the DAW. So it's been our introduction to the audio industry, to the UI industry. We just decided that it's cool to make things better, not perfect, but better. And that's how it started. So yeah, it's basically was the beginning of Voger as a UI design studio. So we made things for free for 2 years. And then we got some first commission work, so it went very well. Okay, so I wanted to bring this topic about the UI designer, the proper UI designer, just because I know that many of the developing developers sometimes struggle with that, especially with finding the right one. Just because, we start this journey with finding the designers with the pitfalls, and I don't want that. Just because I've been through this for these 10 years. I'm finding the proper designer, I'm evaluating him, and I'm assigning him to the proper task. And that's, let's start with this idea that we want to know why we are doing the project. So the project actually consists of the client itself, the designer, and the marketing part of the product itself. So let's think about those three aspects in terms of this. First, I want to ask you how you, the guys here, how you work, how you find a designer for, not only the UI design, but for any a logo or a website design, or probably an interior design. How do you find it? And I'll add it. I'll add my info and my experience to
that. I would say that I would look for an example of previous work of this designer. I don't have a plugin, unfortunately, that I've had to pursue a designer for. So maybe some other people here might have some more experience, particularly with audio interface design, with looking for a designer. So I'll open that question up to the floor. If anyone,
I'll go.
Okay.
So yeah, this is highly pertinent to the journey I'm on, since I'm building a product and a marketing webpage, and there's all these logos and everything. So yeah, I think budget is a concern when, especially for people getting started. I have a longtime friend that I rely on, and I'm kind of picky about usability, and he knows my, the things I like and don't like, but I actually end up having to take his work and sort of do the last mile myself. So I'm very sort of hands-on in determining what we can do, and knowing, I don't know, for me it ends up being I end up being more involved than I want to be, just because yeah, I don't have access to a lot of resources or a lot of people. Like, I would love to know what you're going to say, because I actually do. I need help on marketing page. My designer friends employ it. So where do I find someone? Please let me know.
Okay. David, maybe you want to add up something?
Our experiences are kind of mixed, really. And I guess a few different things. Traditionally, or for some of our earlier projects, they've been friends that people have worked with in the past, maybe in different industries, that have said, yeah, we can, do something for some of your products. And that can often lead to slightly different looking user interfaces. Like, we have a product called Biotech that's quite sort of has an artistic central theme, because the designer was a more kind of artistic designer on that. But we have other products that are very much more functionality based, or more functional based. So they're very different use cases. And we've also used online kind of a service. There's a service called 99 Designs, which we've used for logos in the past, because for something like a logo where you don't necessarily know what you want, you can kind of throw it out there and people can very quickly do a mock-up, and then you can go, oh, I hadn't thought of that idea. That's a good thing to kind of go with. So I guess different channels depending on the use case. But I would say that finding a designer that you work well with and that understands your users, and also the features and stuff that you're doing, like what you need to get across, really helps engineering. If you can get a good design that is just going to fit at different screen resolutions and different sizes, and it just makes implementing that stuff really, really easy.
Yeah, that's a good point. I noticed that you've mentioned you have to know, you've got to know what you want. Well, yes, this is exactly where it basically should start. When I'm searching for a designer for let's say for an interior, right? I start to think what I want, right? Or I'm looking for a UI designer to get my new UI kit, right? So I start to think what I want, right? Because I'm the part of the process, of the big process of creating a user interface, right? So this is a really complex process. Actually, it involves, like I mentioned, the client, basically you or me, the UI designer, and the user, well, the marketing part of the product. So if I can answer the first question, like why and what do I want? So, for example, I want this kind of style. Why do I want this kind of style? Because, for example, I want successful launch, I want sales, I want to be satisfied as a creator. I want to bring an idea to the table to this project, or I want to, probably I want to have more time on marketing and let the designers do the work. So this is the very important step, to put this idea somehow in your specification or just in your like notes that okay, I'm doing this because I want to do like sales, or I want to be a creator, I want to take part, or I don't want to take part. And this is important because it will influence what kind of designer you would probably want to have on this project for you or for your team. So let's move to the, Rachel brought it to the portfolio. So I would like look at the portfolio or go to 99 Design and look at the specific type of portfolio or specific reference or specific image. Here's a funny note, even a story. I'm going to tell you a story that's a hilarious one. So once I hired a designer to make a UI kit. I gave him a test task, a small task. He just nailed it. It was a task like do a simple UI design of one knob in Figma using this kind of reference style. So he nailed it. And then here comes the real task, the UI kit with the real, with the real typefaces, all this kind of stuff, the graphics references. And I see that he's performing worse than on a test task. And when we were digging up this kind of problem, we realized that he just stole someone's graphics for a test task to pass on the project, and he just failed on the simple typeface choice in the real work. So what I'm saying is that sometimes its portfolio is misleading, and what you have to look for in portfolio is the worst item in portfolio. So like if you see the worst item in portfolio, that's an average performance within the period. So like if he posted it a few years ago, it was the average outcome for the period. Well, that's a trick. I always look for the worst looking item, and I'm asking, how was it done? How did you do it? What do you think about it? Whether you consider it good or bad? Well, it's not good to say it just because it's it would lead him into some other kind of discussion. But how did you do it? Basically, what obstacles did you have on that? So it would give you like an experience of what was in his head, what was the process of getting there. So yeah, we covered the portfolio topic. It's because sometimes we're looking at an extremely important thing when you're looking for a designer and you already established your vision, at least a little bit of vision in your head. You have to search for a designer that has already done something similar or is capable of doing at least some part of this work, because you cannot find a designer that haven't done anything like you want and expect a really good result from it. That's actually, unfortunately, that tend to lead us to problems, to unfinished UI kits. Funny thing about UI kits that we're doing, it's basically like a test platform for UI designers that, if they don't pass their kits work, they won't pass for the real UI work. So probably you might use this experience, like having some test task and see how how does the designer do this work? If you, of course, if you have an ability to or a possibility to test it, but actually that's a test platform for me to really find a designer that I can assign to a project, because I know what his performance is. And here comes the most important thing that I wanted to bring to this table tonight. The design itself. Well, the designer, the profile of design, and not the profile like a personality or the profile of what his portfolio looks like, but it's more like a soft skill. It's more like what he looks like in terms of job, in terms of whether he is a chaotic creator, or he is a technical guy, or he's I call them the optimizers. So I have this types of designers. So when I do the UI test work, I try to understand whether the person is a chaotic creator, so whether he is good at creating like something that haven't an unseen, so something new. So he's not just copying parts and pieces of from everywhere into something new, but he could create an idea with some knowledge from other industries or something like that. So this is the first and extremely rare type of designers, and extremely hard to work with within a team because they are chaotic. And once you want them to do a specific, iteration to the UI design, they would like to bring up something new. They don't tend to do exactly what they're told to do. But it's really cool to work with them on something like a creative idea. So the next type of the designer, that is, I don't want you to completely rely on this grades, but they are extremely helpful just to to a little bit measure and do not trust it too much. So the technical type of design, basically those kind of designers are, they love to copy, improve a little bit. They are more into technologies. They are more into knowing super, all this kind of automations, all this kind of features in the software. They are more on the technical side of the design. They're more UX designers. So they're more like really good in terms of delivery, in terms of what features are implemented in what way. So, this kind of designers, they are really resilient. They're really good at doing exactly what they are told to do. And another type of designers, they are optimizers. They are a bit of both, and those are like majority of the designers because they have a little bit of this and those. So I've told you this kind of grades that I've established through years, and the funny thing is that we don't realize that we, as the product owners, like for example, when you are developing a product, you also tend to act like one of kind of the designers on your project. And if there are different matches between the type of owner of the product, whether he's a creator or he is a technical guy or he's an optimizer, and the same with the designer. So I realized that the best matches when the client or product owner is a technical guy and he works with a creator, and they have this perfect match, and vice versa when the creator with a technical guy. And it's really bad when the UI designer and the client are creators. So there's like 20% of such combinations. I've made my own research within all those projects, and I realized that the most hard to perform projects were when I assigned the wrong designer, the creative, to the client. So we as creators typically want to be like more picky, like we want to control things, we want to our vision to be implemented in our design. We have a designer creator, and it's going to be like most of the fails that I've stumbled upon was where I assigned the wrong designer to the client. So basically they are not good match. So about this match, actually, I realized that most of software developers, they are also users of this software. So they also so they can relate to the audience they are developing the plugins to. But sometimes they can just find the perfect match for the design, and maybe this information just a little bit, be a glimpse for you that probably if you have problems with the designer, maybe it just weren't that kind of designed for you. Especially if you're working on a budget, it's crucial to have a proper interview to realize how the designer do, how he thinks, and probably if he's too much just like you, there's a red flag for that. Because it's also hard to say that technical designers are a really good match to the technical developers, just because they could dive into features and just forget about the user at some point. So basically my role in Voger is just to see, to understand from the very first meeting with the client or with the developer, the decision maker, who is he, whether he is a creator or he is a technical guy or he is an optimizer. Basically an optimizer in business world is a businessman, so he basically just don't want to get involved into your design and just rely on the professionals. And I'm just trying to choose the proper design to the project. Basically, that's the trick I tend to do all these 10 years.
Could I? Oh,
yeah, go ahead,
Josh.
Rachel, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to jump in and ask a question from the customer's perspective. So we spoke a bit about having a vision for your product, and I'm wondering, at what stage in the process of developing audio software would you suggest that companies or independent developers should approach a UI design studio or designer if that's a service that they're interested in using? And on top of that, what is some useful information that the customer can have ready when they're approaching that design studio to best help the designer help them?
I still believe that the best scenario where he can start with the vision, where he already has an idea of the product and he just implements it with at least a sketch or a rough idea, the first idea. Because what we as clients have, we don't have this muscle very strong, this prediction muscle. Why I'm saying this prediction muscle is just, it's the vision and the end result are, have this gap of time and gap of a lot of people and a lot of process that prevents us to, and this vision in your head, it's vague. It's really hard to get a grasp of it and transfer it to another person without all those distortion in understanding. I'm just giving you a simple example. Name me any user interface that you consider to be modern. Just one that you consider to be modern. So go ahead, name one.
I think probably Pigments by Arturia. That's a pretty modern interface.
Okay. Pigments. Okay. Name, guys, go on. Just name a few more. I need just to show you this thing.
So I guess there's a few that sort of spring to mind. Like Logic Pro did a redesign probably quite a long time ago now, but that was a big kind of paradigm shift. Bitwig is another one that sort of came on with what I would call a modern looking UI. And then NI's Massive 10 was a kind of big shift from the previous Massive that I think tried to refocus the design theory.
So yeah, the point is, I got the point. So the point is that I brought just one word, modern, right? And if we put all those user interfaces in a line, they would be completely different, not only in terms of the average color scheme, but in terms of the usage of the key elements that creates the style. So I bet they are different in terms of how you perceive the word modern. So this is the problem that many of us struggles when they are prototyping the product. So when they are trying to deliver the vision into the real picture, which is why it's important to and just rare developers do this when they try to find this vision before they dive into the real development, not the real development. I bet that most of you, when you're developing some features, you already have something that you worked on. So it's basically, you already have something to work with. But when you have it like in front of your eyes, it's easier to work with it because you've got it laid out, you've got it designed, just even in a rough sketch. Sorry, I forgot the second question because I got too far into all those examples and stuff. So
no worries, that was a great answer. So the second question was just about what sort of information it's useful to have ready for the designer. For example, I saw you did a great short talk on Voger Design YouTube about designing UIs, and you were talking about the importance of the feel of interface versus the look. So if a customer can communicate what they want the feel of their product to be, is that something that's really useful for a designer to work with? Or is there anything else that you can think of that's just really great to have ready to show or tell a designer when you approach them?
Yeah, not only that, but sometimes it's really good to have like visual references from what you consider to be moody or positive. So you have to deliver this idea with any means that are available to you. So if you're a movie lover, you just given the references of the movie poster, of the movie color scheme, whatever you think that is right for you. Because sometimes when we're having this discussion, when the client gives us the references, it's really good to have this discussion because you definitely sometimes don't see that you have like how to say it, contradictions. I'd say it contradictions because, for example, I've seen this. I wouldn't name the product, but for example, the look and feel of the product should have been like a futuristic, sci-fi, neon, something like that. And the product was like okay, let's call it just an instrument, not hardware. I just don't want to spoil the thing. So let's call it an instrument that is played in huge halls and it's wooden. And most of the competitors have done it in wood, and it's worked really well. And the concept was to do something different from what is on the market. But it appeared to be that this idea were too far from what the users would experience as, yeah, I understand what it is. Yeah, it looks okay to me. Yeah, it feels right. So like by doing those sketches before, you've spent a lot of money into designing the whole thing, but you get to the first sketch and you can talk to a couple of guys, a couple of developers, and you know how to make good questions that would answer. So it's not like sharing opinions, it's just like whether, sorry guys, whether it's like it has that feeling, or whether it seems like this kind of product or something like that, then it would save you a lot of time and money and nerves, especially. and motivation, right, to go on to do this.
Cool. I had a question. So so one of the things that we do at the Audio Programmer is we have a plugin agency where we build plugins for clients, and the approach that we've taken up till now that seems to work the best is that we really just focus on what we want the instrument or the effect to do, and we just have a generic UI layout that we send to the client to test out, and we make sure that everything is pretty much set in stone before we even think about speaking to a designer. And that way, because as you know better than myself, just to add a button or take away a button could completely change the entire design. So the approach that we've taken is that everything has to work exactly as the client wants before we actually even bring in the designer to discuss it. And then once we have the designer, we can just say, here is a list of the parameters. Here's the list. You know, here's a vision board for what the client is looking to do. Do you find that's an effective approach for you, or do you prefer to be involved earlier in the in the creation of this product, or what do you prefer there? And also, I guess another question that leads to other questions is that do you find that most people approach you at the beginning, or do they approach you when they say, I have a plugin, it works the way that I want it, but now I just need the design of it? Or do you find that people involve you from the beginning in that creative process?
Well, answering from the from the last question, there are all kinds of situations actually, and the last one is the least occurring in our work. Regarding the approach that you've described, it's really good approach for the type of the client that is a businessman, that is the optimizer that I call them, because the previous approach that I explained, it was more for technical developers, technical designers, and I know that many of the creative kind of clients, they also tend to have at least a poster or at least something done for the product, just to get that feel, just to, you know, to have it there, to continue working with that feeling in front of his eyes. It's what we've done with our audio project. We also have different kinds of projects, and you still have to, or at least a mood board that you're having in front of your eyes, and you're working with that kind of feeling. Because I really like cinematography. I really like the movies. They are really good reference, because creating a movie is a really complex project, and we just steal some ideas and processes from there. So if you're working for an investor, right, for a customer, in this case, it's more important for them to have like a features, like they are lowering the risks of something that cannot be done, and money are not wasted on like features that are not there, or are hard to implement, or too too costly to implement. So the design comes like on a second, like a supportive thing. But in the end, the marketing creatives, or the look and feel of the marketing campaign would also be important in this case. And there, where design also has to take a lead, because you know, the funny thing is, I've been looking at, I've have this huge shift to this kind of second type of approach recently, and I really like it, because it's more it also lowers the risk for the not that kind of design, or really, you know, all this unnecessary iterations on the design as well. So it's really good for a business. And sometimes it's really good for the user because they've got an established really good UX and a UI design that's implemented to that really good UX. So it's also a win-win for the user. But when you're working with like some startups or some innovative products, then probably the concept or the mood board there has to be a little bit upfront from the UX before the UX takes place. Just because you would definitely work with investors or with the beta testers or with the test or with the users that you want to interview them to get the idea of how do you want the product to be done, etc. What features do you want to implement, and when you're showing them at least the mood board, you get the idea whether there is a match between the type of the user and the type of the product. So yeah, because we from the cinematography, from the movies, we know that there are different types of personalities, and we do have these personalities. We do have this among those users. You would definitely can define a guy who plays rock from the guy who probably listens to the vaporwave, or they are completely different users, and there are different users, different kind of producers, and they're different archetypes, and they like different styles and user interfaces. So yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Actually, I've got two questions, but they're very different, so it's probably best to say them one after the other. You've talked a lot about how to communicate with a designer, or perhaps and before that, find a designer who is suitable for your project. But could you perhaps give some advice of where people can go to find people to even start that conversation? So obviously you run a consulting services, Voger. Is there a list of resources? Obviously, everyone should go to you first and find out see how things work. But is there a place where people go to just get a bunch of different studios or designers?
That's a really good question, because typically an HR human resources do this kind of intro conversation, and but I haven't seen a resource that can evaluate the graphic designers in terms of their skills, how they work. Which is why I realized that there is a test task for that. But I would be really happy to give you a comment on this kind of designer if you have questions, how he performs or something. So just give me a note somewhere in social media, and I'll help you.
I'm more thinking the scenario that perhaps I'm a freelance plugin developer or an indie developer. I'm working on a project, and I think, right, I've got my synth or my plugin to a certain level, but I really want some professional design work to get the polish finish that I want. Where do I start that search to find someone? Do I just type into Google plugin UI design and you'll probably pop up there, and some others? Is it that straightforward, or is there a good resource that lists a bunch
I have a list of competitors.
Yeah, okay. You're probably the wrong person to ask this, because obviously
no, actually I have the list of competitors. I can share it. I've been researching all this time, and I know who my competitors are, what are their strengths and weaknesses. So you can search the designer. So definitely you have only one tool how to evaluate the design according to a portfolio. So you go to either Behance or 99 Designs or etc., and you just look at the picture that you think that it's quite okay. At least the style or the technology used behind it is okay for your project. But then you definitely have to work on some test task in order to understand what his workflow is. So you definitely have to make at least an interview on how he works, what are his processes, what his past experience were in this kind of situation, in bad situations, in good situations. How did he work on that? And well, yeah, the test task is the only thing that shows you the strengths and weaknesses, because eventually you would work with the strengths, trying to avoid the weaknesses of the designer, which is why I have like a lot of designers in my team, because everyone has its weaknesses and you have to work with the strengths. You can just, cover the weaknesses with the strengths of others, of this designer. So I'd recommend you creating a test task that is pretty much close to what he would be doing for a project or for a team, before diving into the real project with a designer. Because every time I try to work with the freelance designers for a commercial project like Straightforward, even with a really nice portfolio, I had to use a backup designers from my team and just switch to my regular pipeline, because it didn't go that well for the client, for the project. So I just dropped this idea many years ago and never came back to it again. Because in our audio user interface industry, there are standards that other industries don't know. There are things that I tried to hire NA players from different companies. So they were elite designers in other companies, and they failed at basic tasks in our audio user interfaces, just because they might be really good designers in their industry, in that industry, but they are not as good for our industry, because you definitely need to have this kind of set of work experience. And we call it the, I don't know the term for it in English, but we call it like насмотренность. It means, sorry for this word, it means that how many user interfaces or reference have you seen and analyzed as good examples and as a bad examples. So you have this like reference base in your head. You have this kind of artistic vision and a vision of possibilities that you would like to try. So you would definitely work with this base in your head, like you're not like with the tools that because an artist, a really cool developer, a really cool designer, he's definitely worked with the hardware tools or software tools, and his base of ideas that he's work gathering. And in audio industry, it's important to see whether it's a proper idea or not before you do a lot of tests and fails. So yeah, so I've had quite a few inquiries where we finished the work after designers that they just didn't get the point of this audio industry. They just couldn't finish the work. They couldn't do the simplest thing that here we are doing on the regular basis, and it was extremely hard for them just because they were doing some posters or website work, and it's hard to switch to audio industry and understand that, for example, the basic scale should go from minus 135 degrees to plus 135 degrees. Like it's a regular thing for us, right? But for the website designing, it's a hard thing to do, or hard thing to to switch to this kind of reference base, I'd say. So yeah, the advice is if you are ready to guide the designer, to work with him tightly because you like him as a person, or he is good for you in terms of soft skills, you can gather and work with these hard skills on the go in work, but you just have to choose the person that delivers to you that is reliable and suits you in terms of he understands your vocabulary, your modern, your like moody, your like positive words. So if you have this really good conversation, really good vocabulary established, if he's really good in terms of soft skills, he's delivering, he's okay for you in terms of budget, then you can put some time into this relationship with any freelance designer. Yeah. I'm not promoting my services, I'm promoting other freelancers right now. But yeah, so everything can be taught. What I've learned from, if the designer doesn't like what he does, he eventually would, abandon his work. He wouldn't be really helpful because he would try not to do this because it's too hard, etc. So probably it's really good to work with a friend of yours that's passionate about audio plugins. He's really poor at graphic design, but he would go there with the right references, with the right time. Well, yeah. Or you just can go and buy your kit. Sorry, guys, I couldn't stop it from saying sorry. Well, it's a joke. You don't have to do that.
What we've done as an agency is we typically have 2 or 3 UI designers, because a lot of times when a client comes to us, if we give them a list of a couple different design studios, they'll be able to look through a list. Typically the starting point is they'll look through the portfolio of stuff that's been designed, and they'll look and they'll say, I want something that's kind of like that. And the thing that happens to be closest to that seems to be the starting point for us. So but yeah, normally it'll either be that, or it'll be, sometimes it may be just a discussion just with a couple designers where we just say, well, look, this is what the client has. It's the same questions that you were talking about, just asking things like, have you ever designed anything like that? What would your approach be to this? Sometimes it might be putting together a quick wireframe just to see what they have in mind. But yeah, that leads me a little bit into a question that I wanted to ask you about when it comes to any creative pursuit, which is about a general being a general service that's able to provide for any type of plugin UI design versus having a specific personality for your design and a specific identity. Do you find, where do you stand when it comes to that? Do you find that you tend to want to be more of a design studio that says, if you're into plugins or if you're into audio software, you can come to us. We can design it to your spec. We can design it any way that you want. Or do you find that you want to go more towards, we have a specific identity? If you look at the products that we've designed, that we've done UI designs before, you can see that there's kind of a common thread, or there's a common there are common fundamentals that we adhere to, and that is us. And if you don't want to adhere to those fundamentals, then maybe we're not the right design studio for you. Where do you find that you are on that spectrum? Do you find that you're more towards the opinionated side, or more towards the whatever you want, we can do it for you?
Recently I'm answering this question with a little bit, prelude, because recently I've done the rebranding, and I've chosen this motto for us as a creative partner. What it means is the creative part stands for innovations, the creativity, all this kind of stuff. And the partner stands for stability, reliability, delivery. Which leads to those two kinds of types of designers that if you need a creative idea, we can have like a creative designer, chaotic, all those kind of stuff designer for you. But eventually, all this chaotic, creative thing has to be delivered, and here comes other types of designers that would deliver it to you. So I've been trying to eliminate those pitfalls of working with a freelance designer, with one designer, because I've worked with my husband from the very beginning of Voger. We've just started, the two of us. He is a creative type of designer. I'm more like this kind of a bit of those two. So I realized that it's extremely hard to work with one designer because you have to work with his weaknesses. So I tried to eliminate the weaknesses by putting more people into process, but and optimize it to balance out all those things for the delivery. So, well, I try to, what I try to say is that I tend to look at my stats, like, the unfinished projects or abandoned or failed projects, and those were for the last 10 years before. So, and I'm sorry for all those 4 projects, because basically it was like where I failed to identify the designer and the right designer and the right process for the type of the developer and the client. And it's been like 300 user interfaces, right? Around 320 at the moment. So I think that a really good statistics comparing to what a freelance designer would have in his career. So I do believe that when you are working, I do believe that we are entering the era when you're working with a complex projects, you would have to rely both on small companies filling out those processes for you, but you need to have a visionary. Basically, it has to be you as a company owner or a marketing guy, or or for example, you're a product manager. So you have to have this vision. So you have to have this role of the visionary, basically, and just like an optimizer for the company. So you have to choose people, and it's up to you whether you want to work with a creative freelancer with his weaknesses, or whether you want with a team who would work out things for you, who would try to to balance, because it's hard to work with the creative people. They are extremely creative, and there's a part of ego here. There's a part of there's a lot of things there, and which is why I realized that okay, I'm going this way. I'm competing with the freelancers. Okay, they have their strengths. They sometimes better in this particular types of processes or projects. Okay, let it be there. I'm going to be a creative partner, so I'm going to deliver. Well,
yeah, that sounds great. We have quite a few questions from our audience, and maybe I could just fire through those quickly. Kostas asks, are there any resources or examples showing what the typical assets are needed to put together a UI kit? So that sounds a little bit like some of the things that you're doing with UI Mother. Is that right?
yeah, I do have this list. It can be shared. Well, you just put some email and I'll send it to you.
Okay. And what's your email, or where can they go to
well, it can be found, it's like support this thing at uimother.com. So support at uimother.com.
At uimother.com.
Yep.
Okay, great. Tigral asks, there used to be a lot more bitmap GUIs, and now vector graphics seem more fashionable. Am I wrong in my thinking?
Yeah, well, I believe it's the tendency to, well, the market is growing and it's changing, and it's influenced by the technologies and by the trends. So now we have cheaper technologies like Figma, and it's easier to work just to design the UI design that would be implemented within a code, just like straight from Figma. And there are trends that have been pushed or just developed through time, not only in audio industry but in global industry. And I'm thinking that it's trend for cheapening, making the UI production, well, the plugin production cheaper, and eventually it influences into more flat, this kind of graphics. Well, I might be wrong, but what I'm seeing is that it really is a trend to less bitmap graphics, less all this type of super creative or super like realistic skeuomorphic things. At the same time, you can be super creative and you can add a lot of details to the UI and make it expensive looking, even if you're working with a 2D or this flat type of graphics. So yeah, I do see this trend as well. And I can't say that I like it, it's just there, but I really miss some, yeah, I miss those kind of super graphic, realistic user interfaces, but it is really good that there are a variety of those, and you can treat different styles, different types of graphics as an instrument to deliver a particular idea. For example, you don't have to make super realistic bitmap user interface for like a simple plugin that just measures, well, do some measurements. You don't have to make it too obvious, to like super kind of stylish, something like that. So it's okay to work with different styles. Style is a tool to deliver an idea and a feeling. So
great. Togrul asks a bit of a futuristic question, but what do you think about UI plugin designs for virtual reality in the future? Do you have any work that goes more into the 3D space, into augmented reality and that side of things?
That's a really good question. I would love to make my hands into that. And that's really interesting to kind of test new environments. Although I don't see too much users, so it's hard for me, to just to see this. I'm not a user of any metaverse, for example, myself yet. So I think that once some of us would be involved in any kind of that activity, we will definitely make that test there. But I don't see too much difference in terms of creating a user interface for there, because all the user interfaces, they have, like even a game user interfaces, they have some rules. And once you've established like a pipeline in one industry, you can, with some pitfalls and changes, you can just dive into that. So whether the guy was asking if it's okay to test and try, yeah, and I would give it, and I would even give him an advice to try to do that, like for free, because we've started when the UI design were not that kind of industry, and it's really good for us because now I can call myself a first UI design studio, because when I started, there were only freelancers. There were no studios at the time. So it's an opportunity, guys. Just grab it.
Yeah.
While I haven't get my hands to that.
That sounds like a great theme for the for this meetup, which is that the opportunities out there, you just have to go
Yeah.
find. Speaking of which, there's a great question relating on that from Niles who asks, hello, I'm a designer / front-end web developer, and my dream job would be designing UI for musical applications and hardware. Do you have any advice for finding projects to work as a UI designer?
Well, start with anything open source and free, just because without a portfolio, it would be really hard to find a job, but it's possible. So it's possible. Well, just when I started, I sent 200 cold emails to different companies with a plain PDF kind of portfolio with my services. So it worked for me. And well, you don't have to start with something. So if it's your dream, you just have to do the portfolio and do the research and find a couple of companies that you would like to try. But you do need to have a portfolio for that. So try with the open source and just one example that also could work. One of my clients just showed me an example that he just found a UI design of an existing product. It was probably an equalizer, something like that, and he just used that work. He licensed that work for his plugin, for his free plugin, so it also works. So you can work with an ideas like a set of plugins that you would like to have, and it's really good for having the idea, implement it, and showing that you can create an ideas, not only implement the ideas of the clients, but you can also generate the ideas. It's really cool. So yeah, that's also a good start.
Great. Alexander Rachov asks, how would you handle a product with existing design where all of the drawing is in code with no use of images? Do you handle that differently than you do with code that uses images?
If I'm were to redesign the plugin, I would use the code as limitation. So what I would use Figma or any flat kind of graphics, and I would so I would definitely use 2D tools and do my pipeline. So do the mood board, the research, the UX, because definitely things would change, or something needs changes, or something improvements can be made. And it's really good to have this a little bit of improvements for the end user, because it's good from marketing point. You can make a message, guys, we'll improve the UX and bring up some UI updates, and it's okay. So yep, I would definitely do my pipeline, but the limitations, the client's limitations would be 2D design for me.
Yeah,
I wouldn't stick to 3D design unless it would serve the really good purpose, like for impacting the particular audience. So, or delivering something really important. So, because it's hard to, I bet it's a really big deal to switch from design with a code to all this mapping, all those graphics, all those assets. That's two different things in terms of both delivery and the time. So I wouldn't do that for the client.
And we have a question from Daniel who asks, what are your thoughts on design competition platforms? So they have these, I think they have these design competition platforms, or where you can submit a spec and then different designers probably submit their proposal for a design or a prototype on spec.
I've never been to such type of platforms. I can't say that they don't work. Probably you can find some guy there. So sorry, I just can't give you a really good advice because I'm not into this. I don't know how this works. Sorry.
Cool. I'm conscious of everybody else's time, so I think we're out of questions, but I'm going to ask one more quick question that I wanted to know about, because one of the things that you had spoken so much about was about communication, and that sometimes you have a client that has one personality and a designer who tends towards a different type of personality. So with the work that you do you facilitate those conversations, or is there a person in the middle that actually helps mitigate those differences and abstracts that out? Because I find that for ourselves, that as an agency, that's probably one of our main benefits, is that we're able to take specific personalities and abstract those out and say, okay, and same thing from the client side, because each client has their own way of relaying information to you, right? And then how does that information translate to what the developers need to do, and how do you sift out the information that maybe is irrelevant or doesn't really work, and just basically sift all that information out, and then what the developers have are just the information on what the direction that we need to go, and then vice versa, right? When the developer has something and they're telling you something that's maybe specific to the code, how do you translate that into something that the client can understand and that's important to the client? And do you find that you're serving that's your main role as the founder? Is that what you do, or is that what somebody does? Or do you find that you really or do you find that you connect once you've done that, do you just connect the designer directly with the client and just let them dialogue it out and then check in with them every now and then? Or how does that work on your side?
There's so many questions, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna answer you with this example that every designer that I hired mentioned that they hate talking to clients. It's because you've done something, you've put an effort into it, and clients tend to criticize it. So it's really hard to work with critics unless you're trained to do that. I love to work with the clients. I'm able to accept the critics, and the critics is a really good part, because it shows the pains that I can relieve, that I can unpack and see what's behind them. How can I assist to that? So that's why I guess it was a really good combination for me and my husband, because he hated to talk to clients, but I loved to talk to clients. So I used my strengths to work that out, both for the clients and for the creators. So I do believe that you have to work with, if you love talking to people, if you're an extrovert and you're a trained salesman, or you've got your prior experience in sales, something that's good to be in position when getting all this kind of project going for the client. In rare cases, I connect the designer to the client, where those are both technical guys, and they just need, in a online workshop to move the things around and just discuss this and that. But in most cases, it just there must be a medium. I had this failed project where the client exactly complained about the manager, exactly because he hated to talk to manager. And that's what I realized, that okay, I didn't have to get this project with my team, because the client wanted to work with one designer. So either For me, it's not a really good thing because a designer has its pitfalls. So we would definitely that wouldn't work out eventually. So yeah. So I just figured it out that if you are creating a complex projects, yeah, you would definitely have like professional to professional. There's you might find this article how to manage communication within between teams. There's a diamond scheme where you connect the technical guy to a technical guy and a manager to manager. It works. It's perfect. So use it. It works for me. It works for an IT industry. So use it. It's really good.
That sounds fantastic.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's very yeah, that sounds great. Okay. Great. Any other questions before we sign off? Wow.
Yeah. So, sorry guys, it took me too long to.
Yeah, this could easily be probably 2 hours longer, but
Yeah.
I'm very conscious of everybody's time. I know it's late over there, and
Is it because I've been plunged into darkness? 1 second. Okay.
great.
I've
So
got one. Can I just plug something real quick?
yes, plug, please.
We have sorry, I haven't been talking for a while and I've forgotten how to speak. We've got a new version of Traction Engine that's currently in beta. It's on the develop branch in the repository. So if you want to make audio timeline-based apps, go check it out. Just a quick rundown of the new things that are in there. There's a much improved API with stronger notions and types for beats and seconds and things like that. So going between the two is now much more obvious, and yeah, you'll be guided by the type system. And we have kind of built on top of that more dynamic notions of time. So we have real-time time stretching, so it happens on the fly, not using pre-rendered proxies, which includes our warp time engine, where you can move different parts of an audio file around. And we have a new beat-based MIDI playback engine. And on top of this, you can now like nudge time, so you can speed up or slow down using time stretching. And we also have implemented improved sample rate conversion using lib sample rate, which is kind of top-notch stuff. There's also more examples, improved demo runner, more documentation, more benchmarks, and more coverage, and lots of good stuff. So go check that out.
Wow. First, that sounds like that would be a fantastic talk. Another reason to have you back to talk about those improvements. Second, that warp the warp time, is that proprietary, or is that using a licensed time stretching library under the hood?
So the warp time functionality is pretty standard. You basically say, I have time points and I want to move them, which gives you essentially a chunk of stretch ratios for your files. So they move at different rates. On the back end, that can be implemented in 3 different ways. We include SoundTouch, which is a sort of granular based time stretching engine. We have support for Rubber Band, which has proprietary license, but it's quite affordable if you're building apps and is pretty good quality. And we also have support for Elastic if you have an Elastic license. So you can use any of those 3 with all of the time stretching features.
Fantastic. Okay. Just as I said that there was a question that somebody had asked that I can answer. Tim Janik has asked, where do developers of open source audio plugins and DAWs find designers interested in participating for unpaid open source work? So something like that could, I will plug something of my own now. That can happen on the Audio Programmer Discord. So we have our Discord community where we have designers, developers of all different levels, interested in all types of projects. So Tim, if you want to join us on the Audio Programmer Discord, you can join at theaudioprogrammer.com/community, and we'd be happy to help. And with that, is there anything else we should mention? Yeah. Before we run off. Cool. All right. We will see you on the next date, which is, do you know, Rachel? I see you scrambling for the state. I always forget to announce it. So it's the 13th of September.
Yeah.
13th of September. So yeah, so the next date we'll be back is 13th of September. Be sure to join us for the Audio Programmer Meetup. We'll have some more tutorials, live streams, and so forth in the meantime. And with that, we will see you next time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.